Hello, and welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's episode, we're going to be going over the extremely raunchy, dirty, and fun story of the Miller. Are you ready for a tale of sexcapades and everything else? Then let's jump right into it, shall we? The Miller's Tale starts out with the narrator telling the reader that the knight's tale is over and everyone in the company agrees that it was a really good story. Even the innkeeper praised it for being noble and virtuous. The innkeeper then opens up the game for anybody else to play. He asks the monk if he might have a story, but the monk can't even get a word in edgewise, and the miller, who is drunk, speaks up and says he's got one that will rival the knight's tale. The innkeeper is not too fond of this and tells him maybe we should wait a while, until we hear a few other stories, but the miller insists that nope, I'm going right now. So the miller states that he knows he's drunk, but his story can rival the knight's. But also forgive him if he slurs a little bit, that's just the wine, the ale talking. So, the reeve tries to stop the miller from speaking, but it's no use. That narrator is telling the reader if they wish to skip this tale, they're more than welcome to, but if they continue to read it and get offended by it, just remember, the narrator didn't write this. This is all the Miller. This is where the prologue ends before the Miller's tale, and now we're going to jump into the tale itself. The Miller starts off the story by telling us of a student who was staying with a newly married couple. The student was called Nicholas, and he was very skilled with knowledge of learning and of cunningness. The narrator notes that he always wore the best he could and always smelled very nicely, but he could also sing pretty well. The couple who had just taken him in was a carpenter and his wife. The narrator notes that there is an age difference between this carpenter and his wife, the wife being 18 years of age and the carpenter quite a bit older than she is. The narrator thinks that this is better if people marry within their own age group for fear of wandering eyes. The narrator then goes on to describe the wife and how beautiful she is. One day, the husband goes away to another town and Nicholas begins to hit on the carpenter's wife. He grabs her and tells her that he must have her and that only she can save him or else he would surely bust. She pushes him off and says that she can't, she's a married woman, and then Nicholas falls to his knees and begs for her forgiveness and mercy. The wife forgives him, and in no time the student has flattered her and charmed her so much that he tells him that if they were to have an affair, they would have to be very cunning and sly because her husband is very jealous. The student says that if he can't fool a carpenter, then why is he going to school in the first place? The narrator then shifts to the wife going to church, and while she's there, one of the parish clerks named Absalon sees her and immediately falls in love with her. The narrator then describes Absalon and how he looked very handsome with blonde hair, blue eyes, and he was just a sight to behold. He also dressed really nicely. He could sing very well and even played the guitar. When he sees her, he describes that he is going to try and woo her and marry her at any given cost. The narrator goes on to say that he would actually go so far as to go to her window at night, even with her husband there, singing to her, trying to win her hand. At one point, we learn the husband and wife's name, the husband being John and the wife being Allison. This comes up when the husband asks the wife if he knows what's going on and why there is some random man outside their window singing. Allison responds that he's just somebody she met at church and now he just won't leave her alone. But Absalon, he don't give up that easily. He sends her gifts and food and wine and everything under the sun, trying to win her over. She's secretly still in love with Nicholas, who is conveniently stayed away so he doesn't cause any alarm. The narrator tells the reader that the carpenter will be leaving on a Saturday, and then Allison and Nicholas talk about a plan they come up with in order for them to be able to sleep together. Then comes the day for the plan to go into motion. It's a Saturday, and Nicholas had been storing food and drink inside of his room for the previous few days. He does not come out of his room for any reason. The carpenter notices that, and he goes to his room because he's worried about him. So he has his servant, Robin, go and check on him. Robin notices the door is locked, but gets down on his knees and realizes he can see under the door and into the room. When he looks into the room, sees clothes laying on the bed, and that no one is moving on the bed as if he were dead. Robin immediately rushes down to tell John everything that's happened. Both John and Robin go up to the door, take the door off its hinges. That way he can help Nicholas as best as he could. John immediately goes over to Nicholas and tries to shake him awake, but to no avail. Finally, Nicholas gasps very loudly and tells John that he has seen things he can't explain. He says he wants to tell him everything, but first he needs a drink. Robin runs down, grabs some ale for everyone, and goes back up to the room, and they all drink. After they drink, they put Nicholas's door back on its holders, and Nicholas tells John that he needs to tell him what God has shown him. But it has to be to John alone. No one else can be in the room. John excuses Robin, and once they are alone, Nicholas goes into what he saw. However, he was not to tell anyone about the vision that Nicholas had, not even Robin. Not Maid, not anyone else. John says that he will forever keep it secret and make sure that he tells no one. Nicholas tells John that God showed him a vision and there's going to be another great flood, and that God wanted to save Nicholas, John, and Allison specifically. This would require John to go out and cut down timber and make 3 small boats for each of them. He was to go to the roof and tie them off, and inside each boat there was supposed to be food, drink, and an axe. That way, once the water got high enough, they would be able to cut themselves loose from the roof and they'd be able to go float down upon the water. He also tells the carpenter, John, that his boat should be far away from his wife's because God does not want him to look at her lustfully before the flood. Once the flood is over, all 3 of them will be rulers of the land, like Noah and his wife. The carpenter agrees to all of this and tells Nicholas he will not tell a single soul and will begin working immediately. He then goes to his wife and tells his wife everything, which she plays along and says that he must go and do this right away. John goes out and builds 3 boats, does everything that Nicholas says to do, and gets everything ready for preparation. When the time comes, all 3 of them go up into the rafters, each in their own boat, and they sit there and wait. The carpenter, being extremely exhausted from all the work, finally falls asleep and begins to snore. This lets Allison and Nicholas know that they are good to climb out of their boats, run off together into the house, and sleep with each other. They have fun with each other all night until the next morning. They can hear the bells begin to ring and they can hear monks singing in the back. The narrator then shifts to Absalon. The narrator knows that Absalon had not seen the carpenter at church that day, which was very odd because he was a very Christian man. He decided that the carpenter must be away, and this was the perfect time to go to Allison and profess his love for her. He made his plan, and that at the very first crow of the cock before the dawn, he was going to go to the window and woo her. He had a feeling he might get lucky, so he had to take his chance right now. The time comes and the first cock crows. So he prepares himself, gets on all of his clothes, even shoves in shoes, some spices to make sure that his breath smells good, and then he heads over to the carpenter's house and goes to the very first window that is at breast level, and he prepares to sing. From inside, Allison can hear him singing and bluntly tells him to please shut up. Absalon tells Allison that he is in love with her and that he just wants to be with her. She tells him to piss off and that her heart belongs to someone else. Absalon, who is completely heartbroken by the thought of this, asks for one simple kiss and then he'd be on his way. Allison gets a very clever idea and says, you know what? Okay. So she tells him to quickly make his way up the ladder and give her a quick kiss and then be on his way, so that way the neighbors don't see him. As she's saying this, she opens the window, sticks her ass out of it, and Absalon kisses her right on the ass, and instantly realizes that she has played a trick on him. The reason he knows it's a trick is because he makes the mention of how hairy it was, and that when kissing a woman, there shouldn't be that much hair. As soon as this happens, she closes the window, and Absalon can hear Allison and Nicholas laughing their hearts out. So Absalon gets really pissed off. He runs across the street to the blacksmith for help. He asks the blacksmith for help, and the blacksmith lets him take one of the pokers. The blacksmith agrees to this, and Absalon says, I'll be right back. I just need to borrow this for a quick second. Absalon goes back to the carpenter's house and tells Allison that he's back, and that for one more kiss, he just really wanted one more kiss, and that he had brought his mother's golden ring and would give it to her if she gave him another kiss. At this point, Nicholas was already up to go pee and thought it would be funny if he stuck his ass out the window instead. Absalon again asks for her to come to the window and give him another kiss. Nicholas goes to the window, opens it, sticks his ass out, and Absalon asks if she could say something, so he knew that it was her. At that moment, Nicholas lets out a wild fart and it startles Absalon, but only a moment's hesitation did it take before Absalon takes the red-hot poker and stabs Nicholas in the ass with it. Immediately, Nicholas cries out for help and yells for water. And with all of this yelling, it wakes up John, the carpenter, the husband, in the barn where he thinks the flood has begun. He cuts his rope and falls immediately to the ground. Allison and Nicholas can hear this commotion, and it wakes up all of the neighbors around them. They run out of the barn just as everybody else is making their way to the barn to see what's going on. Inside, before the carpenter can even get a word in edgewise, Allison and Nicholas tell everyone that he is mad. He thought Noah's flood was coming, so he built 3 boats, hung them up, and wanted everyone to be inside of them when it started raining. The carpenter, with his now broken arm, realizes that he can't say anything, because if he does, everyone already thinks he's a fool. And the narrator states that throughout all the town, everyone thought he was a mad man. The narrator ends up saying that the student got to sleep with the wife, but was branded for his fun upon his buttocks. This is where the Miller's tale ends. I hope you enjoyed this tale. Have a great rest of your day. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay lit.